For better or worse, Throne and Liberty is one of the best looking MMOs that we currently have scheduled.
What a fucking intro. For better or for worse, this is one of the best MMOs, guys. Listen. We're going to take what we can get, all right?
And confirmed to release in 2023. On the better side of things, look to be the game's combat world and mechanics. There's some really promising and interesting.
I love how, like, I already know what he's going to say. He's probably going to say, like, the monetization is bad or problematic because it's made by, I think, NCSoft or something like that. It's just like, it's like you could take the announcement of a new MMO and then put a few prompts into an AI and then have an AI generate a script that you can make a YouTube video about any MMO that you want that's coming out.
Because
they're all the same.
From what they've shown off so far. As for what's worse, well, that would be the fact that NCSoft are the ones developing and publishing this game, so you better get your wallets ready, just crack them wide open and start pouring the money out.
Just
That's
like what
we
I
should
said.
expect from the monetization.
There we go.
Here. However, that stuff turns out, though, I am here for the ride. I am interested in playing Throne and Liberty, and it is.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I mean, even if the game's pay to win trash, I think it'll probably be fun for like a month. I mean, I played Tower of Fantasy; it was fun for a month, so I just hope that I can get good content out of it. Like, I'm not expecting this game to be like a multi-year investment. Maybe it'll end up being that, but I'm not going into it expecting that.
Yeah, a really cool looking upcoming MMO. A lot of the actual game related stuff that they've shown so far does seem pretty interesting, and it's one of the main reasons I am generally looking forward to this game. Well, this week brought us 10 whole new minutes of director's preview. They went into some details about the game, mechanics, and systems. So let's jump in and check all of that out. So the video opened up with one developer talking about being a lifetime fan of MMOs and the varied experiences delivered by the genre. And hey, I'm right there with you. It's the reason it's one of my favorite genres in all of gaming. MMOs are just so very unique still to this day with the type of gaming experience that they give to us, really. I absolutely love the immersion, the social interaction, the sense of exploration and adventure, all of those things.
I love the idea of a shared world. I think that's what makes MMOs really special for me. I fucking love that. I think it's great.
Combined to something that is really unique to MMOs. One really interesting thing that he mentioned here was saying that the best platforms for players to enjoy TL on, in my opinion, would be PC and console. The value and emotion of an MMO cannot be experienced on mobile. Do keep in mind with some of these quotes that we are translating Korean into English.
Yeah,
there is some
probably
meaning
a little bit
lost
fucked
within that, or some translations that sound a little funny. Really, I think what he's getting at here is, hey, mobile is not...
No, it is. I think you can play this game on mobile.
A great platform for the type of experience that MMOs deliver, to which I wholeheartedly agree. I got nothing against the platform. People enjoy mobile games, that's fine. There have been mobile games that I have enjoyed, but by and large, I just don't find it very immersive. I really dislike a lot of the restrictions that come from the smaller screen, but also just the interface and the way you interact with it, with the touchscreen and all of that.
I never played a mobile game.
I feel like mobile games can be restrictive when we're talking about cross-platform things, unless you...
Yeah, I think so too. It's like certain things not happening in the game because it's a mobile game and there are restrictions for that. And actually, I have played a mobile game. I think a better way to say it is that I've never played a mobile game on mobile. Like, I played Diablo Immortal and I played Tower of Fantasy, both mobile games. So, yeah, I've played them before, but I've never actually played them on a mobile device. I also played Bloons too, and like that's a mobile game.
Very strategically managed to make something that's very fitting for like the console or PC platform,
yeah,
but then somehow also works on mobile. When mobile's thrown into the equation, I do feel like that tends to restrict the other platforms that those games are played on. It doesn't have to be the case, but in my experience, that has largely been the case. So for that reason, I'm excited to hear that Project TL is a PC and console first game, but it can be played on mobile, which we'll touch on later on in this video.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was just basically the introduction of the developer blog. Now let's get into the meat of things. For the remaining 8 or so minutes, a few other developers basically took turns talking about different aspects of the game, and this was...
I thought this whole thing, how the weather is going to change the way that you're able to explore the world, I thought this was super fucking cool, man. I love this.
Where things really got interesting. So first, they spent some time on the open world and various systems within, saying the world, which has no boundaries, is the foundation that allows players to connect with one another. It allows for endless ways to interact. Along those same lines, it was later said, the reason why we connected the world into a single zone is that meeting players and constructing communities is the essence of an MMO. I do believe we knew this was the case, but it's good to get confirmation that this is going to be one big open world.
Yeah, it's going to be a seamless open world game. Like, I think that one of the big negative things about Final Fantasy XIV is the fact that you have loading screens to go from one zone to another. Like, if you compare that to WoW, there's not really that many loading screens in the game. And there are other games like New World, for example, where there's basically no loading screens at all. And I think it does create a level of immersion and openness that you can't have whenever you go into instance zone to instance zone, like in Lost Ark or Final Fantasy.
Which implies no loading screens between zones, but also it does seem like that seamlessness also applies to the dungeon experience, which is really cool. They showed a bunch of different open world gameplay in these sections, and I thought it all looked really good, not only in the scale of the environment and the visual fidelity, but also there was a lot of players, big open spaces, and a ton of verticality, which I'm really excited. I love when MMOs go deep into having multiple tiers of levels and various heights for you to climb and descend down from. I like when they do that, and they also implement...
Yeah, it gives you, it adds like a spectacle to the game and like a scope to the game where every mountain that you look at now, you think, what's on the top of that mountain? But like in a game like WoW, where like what's on the top of the mountain, fucking nothing, because that's not the way the game's designed, it can be kind of boring.
Traversal systems that make engaging with that verticality interesting, which it does look like Throne and Liberty does look like they're going to do. But here's something that I'm really excited about. Let's talk about the dungeons. Take, for example, an underground dungeon with a separate entrance and main area. In it, there are multiple floors and spaces, but we have connected all of the spaces together. Moving immediately to the lowest floor is possible, and aid can be given or damage can be dealt to others on different floors. So here they're saying essentially that the dungeons are not going to be linear whatsoever, and that there is going to be verticality, and they showed this off in the trailer as well. It showcased a fly-through of...
This was really cool. I think this was probably the most impressive part of the entire trailer. Like, watch this shit.
A dungeon, starting off outside, moving through the exterior to the inside, and then down several layers, again showing off tons of verticality, flying through a boss room, past some gates into this large open area, all seemingly with no loading screens, and several groups, large groups of players running around, walking into the dungeon, fighting
so
PvE encounters, all of this happening simultaneously. So it does appear like
that's
at least
so
some of the dungeons in this game are not going to be instants, and they're going to be kind of like the classic old school MMOs talking about back in the EverQuest days when dungeons...
Like, this is how it was. I remember whenever I played BDO, like, this is how it was. Like, you would go out, and I don't know if this is still how it is because I haven't played the game in years, but like, there weren't any instances. So like, you would just find a farming spot out in the open world, and there were these places that like had all elite mobs, and they were effectively dungeons, but they weren't dungeons because they weren't instanced, and you would get all the boys together and you'd go farm that area.
Were just open for people to go in, and
that was
there could be groups there fighting. A boss could be engaged with. Really curious how they're going to manage respawns, I suppose, in this case. I imagine there's going to be some system of either resetting the boss, maybe by engaging with something in the environment, or just they will be on regular old mob respawn timers. It does seem like it's not just the world that's open with no loading screens between zones, but also dungeons. I just have to say, dude, I can't tell you how pumped and excited I am to see this just huge open dungeon. And like...
Yeah, I think it's probably going to get griefed like fucking crazy, and it's going to be really annoying, but I'm here for it. Like, let's see it happen. Like, let's see what's going to happen. If it's garbage, then, maybe they'll change it. Maybe I'll just play something else. I don't know. But like a lot of open world dungeons, like this is the thing, like New World had open world dungeons, and like what do open world dungeons result in? Like 100 people sitting there AFKing at a boss, waiting for it to respawn, and then it dies in 3 seconds. So like, how do you avoid having that problem? And it's like, do you have that? Do you avoid that by having PvP? And like, if you do have PvP and then people are killing each other for like tags on it, like how much is that going to hurt like their, some sort of karma system? Like the systems that come into these MMOs that cascade into each other are just like fucking endless levels of complexity.
With the world, the verticality that they're showing here, it looks sick. It's so cool to see that camera just go down through several layers, flying past a boss fight into this huge expansive area. And you take into consideration that this game is going to have a lot of various traversal options, mostly through their system of changing into different animals, which basically represent aquatic, land, and air mounts. And these are just basically the ways of traversing the environment that replace a traditional MMO mount system where you're summoning a horse or something to fly on or whatever. And then that in conjunction with the fact that the game has mantling, letting your character climb up onto objects that they can reach, as well as a grapple hook system, knowing all of that traversal potential with this, what they're showing off is tons of verticality. I really feel like that is something.
I think this game might hit the mark of just fundamentally being fun to play. It might just be fun to play because of the ways that you can move around in the game. Hopefully that's what happens.
That is missing from a lot of MMOs that I've played in recent years. It just feels immersive to go into a game or go into a dungeon like the one that they showcased, and knowing that it just goes lower and lower and lower and lower, and you'll have fights and stuff all along the way. Or there's tons of stuff that you can skip if you want. You can just completely skip certain encounters. You don't have to just go through a linear path, and they actually touch on this as well, saying by connecting the interior, exterior, top, and bottom of the dungeon, we hope that players can share this common spatial experience. Moreover, rather than just rushing through the fields, players can discover their own routes in three-dimensional terrain.
And this is kind of what happened in New World, is that you would have different groups of people farming different bosses. Like, how many of you guys, like, whenever the game first came out, like, you would see people that were farming, like, one group would be farming that big bear boss in Reekwater, and then there'd be another group farming the tentacle boss up ahead of that boss. And there'd be, like, 10 people in each group, and they'd just be doing their own thing. So I think that's probably how this is going to turn out.
Really cool. Generally, I'm excited.
Like that,
obviously, the major concern is the idea of huge groups swooping through dungeons, completely clearing everything quickly and ruining the experience for smaller groups or even solo players. That is a concern. That is absolutely a concern when you have this idea of non-instance dungeons. It's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of MMOs moved away from it. Like
player friction, I think, is like player friction and monetization are the two concerns that I have for this game more than anything else.
With a lot of things, there are pros and cons. Personally, if nothing else, whether or not the idea of an open dungeon, non-instance dungeon
like this
system
looks
really
incredible.
works
I
in
love
the
this.
End, it's nice to see something different from, again, what most modern day MMOs do, the instanced dungeon experience. Okay, next up, they spent some time talking about the weather system and how it can impact the environment and players. We have known that this is going to be a thing in the game where, depending on the time of day and the weather, things will change. Well, we got some more concrete examples. They said, weather and environment have visual effects to augment the sense of reality. This living world is all about adapting to the environment depending on the changes in the setting. Terrain may feel different, ecosystems may undergo changes, and intriguing events can spring up. And we saw,
I think it depends on the scope of them and how many inconveniences are created by having certain weather conditions. So it's like, if you have cool things that can happen during a rainstorm, or like there's a thunderstorm and you can spawn some thunder elemental and kill it, like that's really cool. But like, for example, if you can't use fire spells at all during a rainstorm, I think this could be frustrating for people to play. So it just depends on like how restrictive the different weather effects are.
Some examples, we saw a stone quarry filling up with water during a storm. We saw these sleeping golems waking up during sunrise, plants sprouting to life when rain came in. We also saw a dungeon entrance opening up during a rainstorm as well. But on top of the environmental stuff and NPCs changing and dungeon entrances opening up, we saw how player abilities can be affected. So they talk about the fact that weather might adjust the projectile speed for an archer, but we also saw an example of a wizard's lightning skill growing stronger during a storm, changing from single target to a multi-target chain ability. Really, really cool stuff.
I think that is fucking badass. Like, that's the kind of stuff that makes the game more interesting and more compelling. Yeah, I love that.
There was a little bit of story discussion here where they said we've also spent a substantial amount of time creating the world story. Ultimately, the stories in an MMO are about the history that you all create. However, it's also important to write the background saga. I gotta be honest, in pretty much every MMO, I could not care any less about the hardline narrative, the main story quests that you play through, any cutscenes that pop up. It's just not what I come to MMOs for. For me, it's more about the world building and lore that are created and the storytelling that happens while you play the game.
I've gone through and I've watched, or I've played pretty much all of the story in like Lost Ark, for example, and WoW. And, you know, I'm like halfway through like Final Fantasy story, or at least like probably 40%, 50% through. I don't really know exactly. But, you know, I played through a lot of those. I think that playing through the story has made me enjoy the game more. Regardless of whether like you like the game or not, I felt that whenever I'm connected to the story and I know what's happening in the story, it makes the events in the game more meaningful to me.
Is what I find most immersive. That is what I find most interesting. That's just a personal thing, but yeah, they're gonna have some storytelling. I'm expecting some cutscenes in this game with some main characters and some narrative arcs. I just don't care much about it in the MMO genre in particular, but hey, for the people who do, looks like there is going to be some here. Now moving on to a discussion of combat. They didn't really actually dive much into details about the combat system in terms of...
I also don't think they should try to like work really hard to make the narrative as good as something like Final Fantasy 14. Like, they're a lot more experienced. Like, do what you're good at. Like, your story doesn't have to be like some like fucking multi-level compelling narrative that's told over a 10-year period. Like, just make something simple and just go with that. There's a big dragon, we have to kill the dragon. Okay, all right, there it is. It's simple.
How it functions, but more so about the weapon system. So they say combat is the backbone of MMO games like TL's open worlds. Our combat system doesn't play out in a predictable way. In TL, player roles are decided by what weapon the player chooses.
Yeah, I saw
Rather
this.
than being confined to a class set
like
forth by
World.
the game, players can always change weapons to suit the situation. Two different types of weapons can be combined, and changing between them allows players to maximize their strength. It also allows strategies that can cover potential weaknesses. I actually really enjoy this. I like both types of systems where you have hard and fast character classes, you pick the wizard or the warrior, but I have also enjoyed a lot of the various MMOs that have done this weapon type system. Some examples would be something like Elder Scrolls Online. Although they do have classes, there are also basically entire skill trees that come off of the weapons that you use. New World does something similar, even more so, because they don't have a class system. You are just picking your weapons, and those weapons determine your skills. Another great example would be Albion Online. Like with anything, there's pros and cons to the different approaches of doing class or classless combat. One of the reasons I'm excited about what they're talking about in Throne and Liberty is just primarily because it looks like they have a lot of potential skills and a lot of customization within each of the weapons. You take New World, for example. You got 3 skills when you picked a weapon. It looks like Throne and Liberty.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen with that, because like, yeah, that could be really cool if you had like all these different weapons, but is it going to be ending up more restrictive than what it actually is? That's one of my concerns whenever you have a classless game, where like you have certain weapons that are just never used or not used hardly at all. Is this a weapon that makes your class? It is, but you can swap around them a lot more often, so it's okay.
Will have at least 5, maybe 6. Either way, looks like they're gonna have a lot of customization, and there will be the combination of utilizing different weapons together, which is good. That's the idea. You've got 2 different weapon slots that you swap between. They can either enhance each other or make up for the weaknesses of one of the weapons. More details about combat here, where they said each weapon type offers defensive actions to protect players with good timing. Some sort of a block and or parry system will be available for every single type of weapon. And then they say through the use of several features, players can micromanage the more subtle aspects of combat. Connecting skill sets of different weapons allows players to experience the joy of combining and configuring weapons. This is the free class system.
Yeah, I think this will work pretty well if they have the weather effect system, especially whenever you have, like, I'm assuming lightning abilities and maybe like water abilities or something like that could work well. And so you can use these things together.
the TL is so proud of. We got some details about PvP. They said, we tried to come up with PvP rules that allowed players to decide whether they want to participate or not. Most of TL's fields are safe zones. Once competitions like regional events or boss raids begin, certain fields allow combat to occur. Players can proactively choose to participate or not. In whatever area a player is in, they can check what events and competitions are planned, allowing strategic gameplay and ensuring that there is no chance for players to fall into unexpected PvP situations.
I think that's probably a good thing, to just like make certain zones PvP only for certain times based off of what's going on, rather than just having them always have PvP on all of the time, which could make it to where like certain areas are just going to be camped constantly.
Is pretty clearly just they are going to broadcast if a zone is PvP enabled or not.
Yeah.
They will tell you ahead of time when it will become PvP enabled, and this will allow you to decide if you want to engage in PvP or if you want to leave the area and come back once the PvP conflict is over. While I do like when games just have areas that are open PvP all the time, I appreciate that there is a large percentage of the player base of a lot of MMOs that doesn't want to engage in PvP, that doesn't want to get steamrolled by large groups of players or outgeared or outleveled, and they want to choose when they can PvP. And ultimately, this is probably best for the health of any MMO, letting players choose, giving them the option. If they want to engage in the system, they can. If they want to avoid it and do something else, they can as well.
I think this is a pretty healthy medium, where like you do have open world content that has PvP in it, but players can choose to opt in or not. I think that any time that you force a player into PvP that doesn't want to do PvP, that's not going to be fun for them. I don't think anybody does that and then they think to themselves, wow, that was really fun, maybe I'll do it again. I think that whenever you make players do something they don't want to do, that they wouldn't normally do, that generally is a bad thing. And I think that's the same thing with like different systems, like for example in WoW, where like they go and they like make it to where you have to do Torghast, or like, oh, you have to do this because like there's all these rewards attached to it and shit like that. Yeah.
Now, beyond the open world PvP with these zone events, there's also going to be guild war.
I think also, like, just pause again. I think it becomes even more the case whenever a game is pay to win, which this game could be, even if it's on a soft level of pay to win. Because if somebody else has better gear than you and they have advantages that they paid for and then they're killing you in the game because of that, this is just not going to be a good time for people.
Of this, they said, in TL's fields, there are objects which can be maintained by guilds only. The Blessing Stone and the Dimension Stone. The two stones together are called the Possession Stones. The acquisition of the Possession Stones allows for enhanced guild capabilities as well as procurement of necessary raw materials. In order to get the stones, guilds will fight. So there's going to be guild battles. You're fighting for possession of these stones, probably some sort of a zone control thing where you got to stand by the stone, maybe interact with it, and then gain possession after a set amount of time of defending it. So it's just the guild conquest system, basically.
Yeah, it's basically like node control. It's not that complicated. Sure, that's fine.
Sounds pretty interesting, especially with combined with some of the various castle siege footage that we've seen. Really cool, large number of players.
Yeah,
all
these
sorts
are great.
Of siege equipment, and including these massive stone giants that players can get control of. This looks pretty interesting. Okay, so next up is platforms. Now, remember at the top they mentioned, the developer talked about how the best way to experience the game was on PC or console, but it is going to be playable on phones as well. They mentioned the TL offers a unique UI.
I think that more games are going to be playable on mobile going forward, because like now what you're seeing, a lot of the innovations, especially like this is something that's very, very important with like Unreal 5, is one of the biggest things that Unreal 5 adds is optimization. So the more that optimization becomes a focus in game development, the more games will be possible to be played. It will be possible to play them on mobile.
And UX experience depending on what type of device.
I mean, I'm not
PC
going to play
have
this
their
shit
own
on mobile.
interface.
Fuck that.
Console has its own interface, but also this game can be played by streaming on mobile. So I'm a little confused here as to whether or not this is going to be a mobile first game with that in mind. Although because they mention it can be played through streaming on mobile, this makes me think that it's just going to be this is an alternate way to play a PC and console first game rather than being a mobile first game. That's also getting
I think that's fine. Like, I think it's fine to be able to play the game on mobile and go out and do a few dailies and stuff. And also, if the game is bad to play on mobile, then who gives a fuck? I think the only problem that people have with mobile games is that they think mobile games are going to force a certain type of monetization, or they're going to make the game less robust and less complex because it needs to adhere to mobile standards. So people actually don't have a problem really with the game being on mobile. They have a problem with the implications of the game being on mobile.
Ported to PC and consoles. I hope that's the case anyways, because like I said earlier, I do feel like a lot of times if mobile is the first way that a game is the first consideration in a game's development and its design, I think it can really hamstring it, or has the potential to hamstring it. We'll just have to see what ends up happening with Throne and Liberty. Some other interesting stuff in the final section, they just touch on like the game's visual fidelity. You know, they say it looks good, and yeah, I think it looks pretty good, especially
it looks
for the
great.
number of players. They touch on customization, character customization, the facial expression system, and the fact that you can upload your photos to make a character look like your face. No thank you. No thank you, but
I will 100% do that.
If you want to do that. And
yes,
then also
I'm
that the game
100%
will
going to do
support,
this.
quote, countless numbers of players concurrently, and they've spent a tremendous amount of time on optimization. They then said, we promise that the game will run as smoothly as possible. And I will admit, although early on optimization was a big concern, we saw some really poor frame rates in some early footage. A lot of what they've showed recently has had a ton of players on frame, and it all looked pretty smooth. So it does seem like the game has gotten better in this sense. Okay, so that is...
I think that's something that will get better over time as well. Yeah, like optimization, I'm not that worried about it with how many people they're showing in sieges, etc. Because they wouldn't plan the game. I mean, like, fucking maybe they are, and I'm wrong about this. But it seems to me like you wouldn't plan a game to have like 50v50, 100v100 sieges if it's so badly optimized.
The recent director's preview video, there was a lot of really cool stuff in here. Some of it was retreading information we already knew, but there was a lot of new details, and if nothing else, we saw a lot of new interesting footage, a lot of gameplay footage, a lot of different examples of the things that they've talked about, and it has me pretty excited. I think this is looking pretty darn good. Now, I did cover this video a few months back, and since then there was also actually one other update. This came in the form of a closed beta testing highlight video where they showed a few interesting things. They showcased character creator, looks to have the usual amount of depth as many
the character creator is fine. It actually is pretty good.
Korean MMOs, which is to say quite a lot of depth, quite a lot of customization options. We saw some shots of the hybrid action combat system. By my guesstimate, it just looks like they're going with the soft lock system, similar to what Elder Scrolls Online uses. We saw some animal transform.
I feel like in general, a soft lock system is probably the best for MMOs going forward, is to have where you can lock on to a target for like your basic attacks, but in order to do like actual like skill shot attacks, you have to aim the attacks themselves.
Like I
so
mentioned,
it's like an amalgamate. It's like a combination between like tab targeting and action combat.
Earlier, this is just this game's mount replacement. There was a bunch of footage of PvE and PvP gameplay. Specifically, the PvP section showed a bunch of castle siege. And one thing that really stuck out to me the most in all of this was just the sheer scale of players. Like, by my count, there's got to be at least 100 players on screen in a few of these clips. And that is awesome to see. It seems like they're utilizing some sort of shadow or template characters to help with performance. Basically, like simple versions of character classes with
this
fewer
is what
details.
Ashes Creation is going to do
on
too.
Screen once you reach a certain number threshold. But regardless, lots of bodies on screen, lots of action, lots of effects going off. It all looks pretty cool, and I really like the scale. There are
one thing that I'm concerned about with this game is the server size. I'm worried that like there's going to be 2 or 3 big servers, and there's going to be 10 servers or 20 servers, and the rest of them, the experience you have is going to be really diminished. I think that people, whenever you play on a dead server in an MMO, there is nothing more depressing than playing on a dead server. And I'm so worried that's what's going to happen with this game. And that's what happened with Tower of Fantasy and New World. And I think also, to a lesser extent, Lost Ark, is that a lot of these games kind of just had these really big servers, and then the popularity for the game waned off, and you don't have server transfers yet, so you're just fucked.
Some odd things going on that I want to mention with this game. I've liked what they've talked about and what they've shown. I'm really curious if they're view botting, though. And I don't
Yeah, I
say
saw
that
his tweet
lightly,
about
but
this.
basically, looking at the numbers of a lot of their videos, something just seems off. So, for example, the highlight dev video that they just put out has 750,000 views. It might be over 800,000 or 900,000 by the time this recording gets finished, but only a few hundred engagements.
I think the reason why this happens, like a logical reason why this could happen, is that they have this video embedded on their website, and every view on the website embed counts as a view on YouTube, but being able to like and comment on the video is not possible through the website embed. That's probably what happened. I find it unlikely that they're actually paying for view bots, but it's possible. I mean, stranger things have happened.
200 or 300 likes and dislikes and 39 comments. That is far, 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 far below the engagement numbers that you should have.
No, there's clearly something that happened.
Over 750,000 views. Like, I don't know, it's just really disproportionate and it feels a little fishy. I don't want to accuse them of anything. I just should point out that the views to engagement are, as someone who has been on this platform for 12 years now, they are way off.
It is beyond the normal scope. It is like, you could take 1,000 videos with that amount of views and not a single one of them would have that low of an engagement ratio. Like 1,000 videos. So yeah, it's massively suspicious.
The mark, it just doesn't really make sense. I'll just assume it has to do with video embedding.
Yeah,
and that's the answer.
That's the best answer I can give.
So as of now, Throne and Liberty is scheduled to release in the first half of 2023. It is coming to PC as well as console. I suspect we will get some beta testing prior to the actual release. As time goes on and we see more of this game, while I am still certainly skeptical, especially because of who is developing and publishing the game, and the monetization that is almost certainly going to be very aggressive, very predatory, and as close to pay to win as you can get, if not outright pay to win, at the very least, almost certainly very, very full of pay to convenience. Even with those things,
I feel like in a lot of ways, pay for convenience is as bad as pay to win. I mean, obviously, like, everything exists on a spectrum. But to me, like, whenever you have the game that has, like, these intentional fucking hurdles that you have to pay money to remove the hurdles, oh my god. And again, like, this is all speculation. We don't know any of this. We have no idea. But it's just based off of prior experience.
The more I see, the better this game looks. If nothing else, I'm hoping for a fun gameplay experience.
And it also, like, I want to add a little bit to that, is that, like, for example, with Lost Ark, what I don't like is how you can pay to, like, autocomplete Una's tasks and stuff like that. I think that's stupid. I do it every day, but I think it's stupid that you can do it. And I think the same thing is true whenever you can, like, buy levels and everything like that. I am okay with, like, one-time purchases, especially if it's a free game, like PoE has, like stash tabs. You buy a currency stash tab, and that stash tab exists in perpetuity, and it never really becomes outdated. So in the same way that you can do that, I'm okay with it. And I think BDO had certain costumes that you could wear that would give you like 10% more experience and some other stuff as well. I think that's kind of okay because you don't need to continuously buy them. But the problem is whenever you have these like daily or weekly activities that you can spend convenience cash in order to bypass. Does that make sense? And again, this is all a spectrum. So it depends on like what these numbers really look like and what the game really is.
To get even just a few weeks or a month out of the game and just to explore a new world, enjoy some new systems. This open world with all of these players and these traversal systems and these open dungeons, dude, it looks really cool.
I just want to play a game.
I'm pretty pumped to explore and check it out. As always, we will navigate the monetization like we have to do with so many modern games, but especially live service games and MMOs. We will navigate it. We will deal with it. We will complain about it once we get more details because we should continue to push back against it, even if it is shoveling against the tide and ultimately will have no effect because of the sheer number of people who just don't think about it and just don't care and are happy to spend. And hey, I'm happy to spend some money if I enjoy the game. I wish these games weren't so heavily monetized. It is the world that we live in.
I think that the problem with games like this is the open-ended nature of spending money, the open-ended nature of buying gold in Lost Ark and then buying gold to hone in Lost Ark, the open-ended nature of buying WoW tokens in WoW. The issue is not that there are microtransactions in the game. The issue is that you can continuously use these microtransactions and become more powerful in a seemingly uncapped way, or a functionally uncapped way for like 99.99% of the audience.
Barring just not playing my favorite genre of games, which is live service games and MMOs, there's not much more I can do than complain, because I still want to play these games.
Yeah.
Why is it? I'm so sick of the monetization. I mean, I'm sick of talking about it. I just want to play and enjoy fun games.
Yeah, I kind of am too, honestly. Let me link you guys the video.
Complain about it. Hey, it makes for good content too.
Yeah, it sure does.
Get ready for the why you should be concerned about Throne and Liberty video. It'll happen at some point. I promise you.
Yeah.
All right, that's gonna do it for today. I'm excited about this game. I am. Hoping it turns out great. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Okay, yep, that sounds just about right. Let me go back over. I'll pull this up and read some comments on it. So, yeah, any Elden Ring content today? Depends on how fast we clear Baral Shaza and how far we get, but we're going to find that out in just a little bit. I'm going to read some comments about this first. Non-instance dungeons, as nice as it sounds, will probably end up being played in a similar fashion like chest runs in New World. Exactly, yes. And again, this stuff, it always depends on the way that it's balanced and how it's designed. That's the only thing that really matters. Everything else is all a footnote. A really good system can exist inside of a really bad game, and a really bad system can exist inside of a really good game. So we're going to have to wait and see exactly what these things actually look like.